You ever realize that your tank isn't a mini ocean? It's more like a carefully controlled environment that tries to mimic some aspects of the ocean, like rocks, sand, and beneficial bacteria. But there is a misconception going around that's causing some serious headaches in the reefing community. This misinformation could be bad. Therefore, we need to understand where it comes from and why it's causing us so many problems in our reef tanks, especially mine. So, what's causing all these problems? It all comes down to a misunderstanding of something called the Redfield Ratio. Ever heard of it? I hadn't until I started keeping a saltwater aquarium 4 years ago. And even then, I never really understood it until recently. The Redfield Ratio is all about the balance of nitrogen and phosphorus in phytoplankton, those teeny plants that form the base of the ocean's food chain. But here's the thing. Phytoplankton live in the vast open ocean, not in our closed-off reef tanks. So how does this ratio even apply to our aquariums? Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Which brings us back to the problem I'm experiencing in my own reef tank. And no, I'm not talking about using tap water, although that definitely contributed to the issue. There's something else hiding in plain sight, something that's been misleading reef keepers for years. So what's the Redfield ratio and why is it causing so much trouble in our reef tanks? Now, before I dive into my own tank struggles, I want to give a huge shout out to Logan, the content creator for the YouTube channel Reef Rookies. He is for his awesome video on how our tank's parameters can be in the proper range but still be out of balance. He explained the Redfield ratio in a way that totally blew my mind and got me on the road to recovery from this algae apocalypse here that you see behind me. I don't want to go too deep into the Redfield ratio itself, but what I will do is show you how this misconception caused a major imbalance in my own reef tank. Reef Rookies really opened my eyes to the importance of nutrient ratios, not just individual numbers. His video showed me how even if your nitrates, phosphates, alkalinity, and pH are all within the recommended ranges, you can still have problems if they're not in the right balance. So, armed with this new knowledge, I started to investigate what was really going on in my tank. And what I discovered was a revelation. I'll leave a link to the Reef Rookies video in the description below, so be sure to check it out after this video. It's a game changer. So, what's going on in my tank? Why is it exploding with algae like I just poured a whole bag of fertilizer in there? It's like I was trying to grow a lawn in my tank instead of corals. But wait, you might be asking, aren't nitrates and phosphates like fertilizers for plant growth? And you're absolutely right. In gardening, we use the NPK ratio, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, to provide the right nutrients to our plants. But this is where things can get tricky. Let's say you're growing tomatoes, those big juicy ones. You water them, you fertilize them, but when it comes to harvest, all you find is a big, lush green plant with no fruit. What happened? Well, you might have used a fertilizer with a high nitrogen ratio like 25:5. This is great for leafy growth, but for fruiting plants, a high potassium ratio like 5:10:10. Therefore, the imbalance in nutrients prevented the plant from producing fruit. So, just like with my tomatoes, my reef tank was experiencing a nutrient imbalance. But instead of lacking fruit, it was overflowing with algae. It is overflowing with algae. And just like the tomato plant, the wrong ratio of nutrients was to blame. The Redfield ratio, which focuses on the needs of phytoplankton in the ocean, doesn't apply directly to our closed loop reef tank systems like mine. Therefore, blindly following this ratio can lead to imbalances and problems, like my algae explosion here. So, how bad is the imbalance in my tank? I'm glad you asked. I just went to my local fish store and they use the API test system for my water parameters. Brace yourselves, folks, it's not pretty. My nitrates are not ideal, but manageable. However, my phosphates, oh boy, they're still a little high. It's way too high for the 101 Redfield ratio that we're aiming for. It's like trying to bake a cake with a whole cup of baking flour instead of a teaspoon. No wonder my tank is overwhelmed with algae. It's like I accidentally created the perfect algae farm. But don't worry, I'm not giving up. I'm going to tackle this imbalance head on and restore my tank to its former glory. In the next part of part 2 of my video, I'll show you the steps that I'm taking to combat this algae invasion and bring my nutrient levels back into balance. So stay tuned for the exciting conclusion of this reef tank rescue mission. We're going to fight those algae and restore balance to my underwater world. It's going to be an epic battle, but I'm confident we can win. I'm John Jr. Take care of yourselves. God bless. Bye-bye.